Welcome back to another Andscape Roundtable, and it is Halloween, so that just means we have to have a spooky conversation in store. Today, we're going to discuss the shift in the horror genre when it pertains to Black people. We have films like Get Out and Spell, TV shows like Lovecraft Country and Them, but in the beginning, Black people didn't have diverse roles in movies to act in that genre. We have a great panel with us to help navigate how Black people got to this point with the horror genre. I'm your host, Kelley Carter, and joining me today is writer Martenzie Johnson, producer Cornell Jones, and Dr. Kalima Young, a films professor at Towson University. Welcome, everyone. Thanks for doing this.
Yeah, thank you for having us.
Thank you.
Absolutely. So let's start here with this. What's everyone's relationship with scary movies? Do you love them? Do you hate them? And if you love them, what's your favorite? Let's start with you, Dr. Young.
Ha! Oh, I love horror movies. I think the first the first film I ever saw was a horror movie. I was 4 years old. My mom obviously didn't think that I would remember it, but we went to the drive-in and we saw Wes Craven's The Hills Have Eyes, and I was like, "Wow, isn't this neat?" And I think that's when the bug kind of caught me. I'm a big horror movie fan. I think my favorite horror film would be The Omen. But yeah, I'm a fan of all kinds of genres and versions of horror films. But I've always been a big fan of Damien and The Number of the Beast and all such rot. Yeah.
Martenzie, Cornell, how about you guys? Favorite horror film if you like horror?
Yeah, I'll take that. I do not like horror. In fact, I've hated them since I was a young child because they scared the living hell out of me. I've only seen a small collection of horror movies inside of a movie theater. That's probably the last place you'll catch me watching a horror movie. But that being said, I've seen every entry in the Saw movie franchise, and I'm disgusted by it, but I can't stop watching.
I live in between both of them. Yeah, so I'm a fan, but I feel like I grew up in a Christian household. We had to sneak to watch scary movies back when I was growing up. My only quarrel, I have a little quarrel with scary movies. I'm a runner, and the running scenes just always get me. I get so mad every time I see bad form, and just tell the people to run, like run with some form, and you'll get away. But we'll talk about that later, though.
I love it. Well, you know what? Let's go ahead and move right along to one of the biggest milestones for Black people in horror films. George Romero's Night of the Living Dead. It featured the first Black lead actor in a horror film, and it came out in 1968, which, just to let everyone know, that was the same year that MLK, Martin Luther King Jr., was assassinated. And the ending was very sad, but it seemed almost intentional by Romero because of the timing. Are you guys aware of how that movie ends, Dr. Young?
Oh yeah, that's one of my favorite films. I show it every semester in my Black cinema class.
I was gonna say, can we spoil it for people who haven't seen that ending of that movie to kind of explain what I meant there?
Sure. So our protagonist, Ben, played by the formidable Dwayne Jones. Man, he was good. Anyway, so Ben, he survives a whole entire night of zombie attacks, only for him to meet a very tragic end at the hands of the law enforcement and sort of posse that were going through cleaning up the town of the last remaining zombies. And at the end of the film is in black and white, and George Romero chose to show what happens to his body and the bodies of all of the other peoples that were presumed to be zombies in stills, in photographs of a large funeral pyre to some extent. And we see Ben's character, his body, pulled out with meat hooks and thrown on a pile of other bodies and then set alight. And so much of that imagery feels very visceral when you put it in the context of 1968 and you put it in the context of police brutality and state violence against Black bodies. And according to Romero, though, he had always had this thought that this was going to be like the montage at the end of the film. But you have to think that as a visual storyteller, he would understand once he saw that montage, the kind of story that he was telling, the kind of metaphor that that montage would create, especially for Black viewers of this film who were feeling visceral collective cultural trauma. So, I'm sorry, did I spoil it too much? Or?
They killed the black man. That's what she said.
So Cornell and Martenzie, let's bring you guys in right now. What do you think about that? I mean, remember 1968, a leader who was really trying to work towards progression for Black people was just assassinated. And then this very controversial ending to a film happens. In some ways, maybe it seems like the filmmaker wanted to reflect what was actually happening at the time. But what are your takes on that? And what do you think about that?
I think it's the best possible ending for a movie set in 1968 because, like you said, Black leaders are being assassinated, and he's really, outside of being a lead role, like he's a leader of this kind of ragtag group of people in the house. But watching from the context of 2022, let me tell you something. Him getting killed in the end, that didn't feel like much of a spoiler because this man was wilding the entire movie. He punched a white woman in the face. He yelled at another white man. I'm pretty sure he manhandled a white child. So really, we all should have seen the ending coming if we're being completely honest. But again, that's watching from the context of 2022. But yeah, Dwayne was wild.
And Martenzie, for me, the whole movie, he was outspoken. He was doing different things. At the end of the movie, I just wanted him to say something. When he was looking through the window, say, hey, what's up? And they're not gonna shoot at you. But he was very quiet as a church mouse, just peeping out. And I just thought that was crazy to me. Like, say something, they won't shoot you. But it just all happened in the blink of an eye. So I wanted him to have that same energy. I wanted him to keep that same energy that he had the whole movie.
Oh, they was gonna shoot him if they knew he was a black man too. Really.
Yeah, like, come on now. He could have been like, yeah, I'm cool. And they were like, well, we still don't like you. It's 1968. Goodbye.
It would have hurt his voice first, and they'd be like, oh, he cool. He'd have had a better chance, I feel like.
Well, you know what, guys? Not too long after 1968, Black people really started to take control of our narrative and the filmmaking experience, and the kinds of stories that were being told in the Blaxploitation era really reflected that, I think, well. And of course, horror films were included in that. You had films like Blackula, Ganja and Hess, and Blackenstein. You know, what do you think Blaxploitation films did to the horror genre?
We have to, one, put the Blaxploitation genre into the context of its time. This is at a very pivotal moment in sort of urban and metropolitan life in the U.S., where the white flight to the suburbs meant that there were movie houses in cities, and the folks that were left behind in cities as whites were fleeing to the suburbs were Black folks. So suddenly we have more movie theaters that were being populated by by Black folk. And then we also have this movement from a almost assimilationist move for civil rights to one that's more of Black power, that is also infused with the Black arts movement. Between those things and the fact that Hollywood was actually losing lots of money at that time, you have this brief entry point where Black artists were able to start telling their own kinds of stories. And this is where we have Sweet Sweetback's Badass Song, and that's when we have the entire creation of the genre. So when I think about those horror films that were created during that time, the two that stand out for me the most are Ganja and Hess and Blackula. One, because Ganja and Hess was really focused in this interesting diasporic conversation of what does it mean to be Black and what does it mean to be a decolonized Black people. And it was really telling this larger political conversation with some vampire stuff, which is interesting. And then and then Blackula, which of course is a ridiculously fun take on the idea of Dracula. This Mama Wande, the king, was trying to work with Vlad Dracula to help end the transatlantic slave trade, and he was instead turned into a vampire. So at that particular point, you can see the influence of sort of the Black arts movement and the Black power movement and Blaxploitation on these horror stories as they were coming to light.
Putting our, I don't even want to call it unique, but our unique spin on it as African Americans, like, you know, we have more style, we got more swagger. That's why our Dracula has a fro and sideburns. stars compared to the more pale skinned original Dracula.
And Blackula was in the club, heavy. That's what impressed me. He was in the club. He was like, I gotta kill some folks, but I gotta hit the club first. That was
He had to have his he had his cognac, he had his little cape. He literally was he literally was fashioned after a pimp of that particular era of film, to show the kind of power that he had and to show the kind of swag that he had. And he was, of course, a prince of an entire nation. So, you can have your swag if you
Yeah,
need
it's
it.
like
Go
if
eat.
Twilight starred Huggy Bear. Is the sense I got from looking at Blackula. You see it.
That's the film I think I want to see now, actually. Even after the black exploitation era in Hollywood, still didn't want to give black actors many chances in horror films unless they were, in certain roles. And got to a point where if you saw a black person in the film, you knew that they were either the magical Negro or the character that was going to die first. Because we saw that kind of being poked fun at in a really smart way in Scream 2. You see Jada Pinkett and Omar Epps literally having this conversation in the movie theater about why they don't like horror movies because the black people always die first.
But
And
then they
then
killed him anyway.
wah wah wah. So let's talk about that because black people, and it's true, have been sacrificed first in a horror film to protect usually white protagonists in the movies. Um, and why is it that you think that we were seeing that happen the way that we were seeing that happen, Dr. Young? Like because there's something to that. I don't think that was just like a funny running joke for several decades. I think that was something that was significant enough that we paid attention to that and talked about it the way that we did.
It's because black bodies and screens, especially in Hollywood films, are disposable things, right? And if you're ever going to make something disposable, right, to set the stage to set us up for a protagonist, generally white, who's going to be able to best or survive something, you have to have the most disposable bodies first. So I think about the fact that most marginalized folks are the disposable ones in horror films. And it just literally sets up the body count for a white protagonist who's going to come in and save the day.
I can't be as articulate as Dr. Young here, but I was just saying, it's just racism. It's just plain old racism. Really tokenism baked in there too, because after, in the beginning, there were basically no black people in these horror films, and then they started to integrate them into it, but it was only really one at a time. You'd only have that one character, and then they sacrificed that person because, look, it's a white movie. The white people watching the movie want to see white people survive. And you might get a little diversity by putting a black person in it. So say Jada Pinkett and Omar Epps. In the late 90s, to have Omar Epps and Jada Pinkett in your movie and to kill them off in the first 10 minutes, that just tells me everything I need to know about you as a director or writer of the movie. Like, you don't see star power. They're the biggest stars in the entire movie, and you kill them off. Or you go to, we talk about Freddy versus Jason, Kelly Rowland. Like, it's just like they're cast specifically to die. And again, the only real explanation for it is racism, and you don't think fans will be attached to the black person in the movie, so you kill them off.
But I'm gonna add this though. I'm gonna add this because I remember watching I Still Know What You Did Last Summer and being surprised and shocked all get out. Girl Brandy made it through the end of the movie. And I think that was the wink and the nod that the director wanted us to take away from that. At least that's what I thought as I think I was in high school or college kind of watching that film when she came back and was like, nah, girl, I'm still here. Like, you didn't get me. And that wasn't her exact line, but it was something kind of like that. And I remember thinking like, hold up, is the tide turning? Are things changing?
For me, it's the contrast of real life scenarios that we've always seen as black people. I think that's what made that conversation so impactful was, oh, nobody black would really do that in the movie. Like, if somebody sat next to me with a mask on, I'm not sitting there like, oh, why you playing, man? Like, nah, like, hey, so what you doing? I'm backing up. My first move is to look to my left, like, what's up? Who is you? So I think that the contrast of all of those movies of different things of like black people just dying early, it just sparked that conversation and made it more controversial. And I don't know. I guess racism is the easy answer as to why it happened. And even like, I think to myself, it's not even a scary movie, but when Chris Brown died, do y'all know the movie when Chris Brown was in the movie for 3 seconds? What's the movie, Martenzie?
Stomp the Yard.
Stomp the Yard. Listen, all of my middle school friends were devastated in 2 seconds. But they went because of Chris Brown. So I always thought that the Scary Movie was that same type of situation where they're just trying to get these black actors and they want us to come sit down and be, kind of invest in the movie, even though after the first 3 minutes, it's like, dang, ain't nobody else left represent us.
The good news, depending on how you look at this, is that we're at an interesting space, I think, right now when it comes to horror movies. The genre has essentially been flipped on its head. When it comes to Black people's relationship, in particular with horror movies, I think that we can probably thank Jordan Peele, who's been a leader of sorts and has kind of given us these. I don't want to necessarily call them woke horror films, but essentially they're films that get us to think. They're layered films for this genre in particular. I think films like Get Out, Us, and most recently, Nope. There feels like there is a shift in that horror genre, and for me, who is a non-horror film watcher, I have to watch whatever he does because I do find it interesting, even though I have to turn all the lights on in my house when I go to sleep at night. Cornell and Martenzie, I see both of you guys laughed when I said that. Martenzie, I'm going to start with you on this one. Are you feeling a little bit more inspired by some of these more recent films that you're seeing by Black filmmakers like Candyman, like Nope, like Us, like Get Out, that give us something different than we haven't seen before?
Yeah, I will say on the one hand, obviously you're giving a Black director the opportunity to make these films, and you're allowing Black people to be the leads of the movie, whether they live or die, whatever, they are the central focus of it. That being said, and I'm speaking particularly of Get Out here, it does have to have a social commentary aspect of it, and it has to have Jordan attached to it in order to get made. And I'm just like, I'm thinking of, I Know What You Did Last Summer. You hit my son or whoever with your car, now I'm going to come back and kill you. That's the entire plot of the movie, and then you get to Get Out, and there's all these layers and stuff. So we've made progress on one end where you give us the opportunity to do it, but Jordan has to be exceptional in what he does, and he has to put his name on other stuff that other people make for them to get the opportunity. So we've made the progress, but I think it's still a little bit limited as well.
And to me, giving Black people something to root for is of the utmost importance. And my mind goes to Lovecraft Country. Recently, my wife cannot stand watching anything horror. She will not do it. She will close her eyes during commercials. But during Lovecraft Country, she was like, I have to watch it. Like, I have to. Like, I'm invested now. And it's because we have those people to root for. And again, it was gory, it was interesting, and from somebody who again isn't like super deep into the genre, it interested me and it made me want to watch these other movies. So to me, it's an important time, and especially the Get Out and the Jordan Peele movies as well. They have a huge impact on people. As you said to Kelley too, like you're not even like crazily invested in it, but you're like, I gotta watch it. I have to be, see what's happening because of that social commentary as well. And I think that, I don't know, and Dr. Young can explain a little bit further, but I think that this is like kind of a time where Black horror is impacting the masses a little bit more than it ever has in the past.
Yeah, no, I agree with all of y'all. I agree with all of y'all. And oh, Lovecraft Country, what? Don't play. Such a good show. Um, I think one of the things we have to keep in mind with this horror noir movement, though, is that they're smart because they are using the genre of horror against the grain, right? So like the whole entire thing, we have to remember that horror movies are all about the abject, the border between what's normal and what's abnormal, and how there's seepage there. And in the seepage, that's where the bad stuff happens, right? And what these horror noir films that are being put out and shows like from Jordan Peele and things like Lovecraft Country they are taking blackness that is usually seen as the abject thing, the thing that is abnormal, and they're showing the terror of being the abject figure, right? They're showing the terror of like what is racism? Like that racism is an actual terror. And this is the experience that Black folks have had to labor under. And I think that is just really smart storytelling that is happening that I think people are a little more open to hearing. And especially when you have shows that are tapping into conversations and histories that are steadily being invisibilized and always invisibilized, it becomes also sort of a learning situation for people as well. So I think that we're in a really sort of fruitful time right now where folks are using genre and using the actual rules of the genre to make people think a little bit more and to expose us to more history and also to give us folks to root for. And who didn't want to root for everybody in every single film that we've been seeing and watching now? You know?
Absolutely. Well, you know what, guys? I did not count on us having as great of a discussion about horror films as we did, but we did. And I hope you, the viewers, enjoyed this as well. As a matter of fact, do us a favor and let us know your favorite scary movie. We cannot wait to hear from you. Bye. I'm not gonna be able to sleep tonight.